The question of yesterday is, what is in there in my life that is not filled with the light of the Lord and Our Lady? This question is like an examination of conscience. And then you can go to confession about the response that you reach in your souls. But if you turn, there should not be interference if you turn your phones off. But today we're going to speak of the spirituality of Bernadette. And we're going to dedicate several days to Bernadette. Why? Because we know yesterday we were speaking of the most important points of Lourdes, which Lourdes is inexhaustible. But there is something very important, brothers and sisters, and that is that we, the Catholics, as I was speaking yesterday, we live in the communion of saints, and the communion of saints is with the triumphant church, the militant church, and the purgative church. I think that we, thanks be to God, in our family, there is a very strong centrality of the presence and the intercession of the life of the saints. And that is why we have as our apostolate pilgrimages, so that we may take you all to holy places, and so that you can also come to know the lives of the saints of which we are going. And so in our family, there is a familiarity, let's call it, with the saints in the life of the church and in our own lives. And so, what is it that we need to do here in Lourdes? Here in Lourdes, there are two persons that envelop the whole mystery and this whole gift and grace. The person par excellence is the Blessed Virgin Mary, but Our Lady chooses a child, a peasant, as we were speaking yesterday. She chooses the smallest in the world, just like she will always choose the smaller ones. And so the one that wants to be great in the kingdom of heaven, may he make himself the smallest. She chooses Bernadette, and therefore Bernadette is extremely important, not only in the apparitions and in the event of the apparitions, but she is also important to understand the effects of the apparition of Lourdes. What did Our Lady want to do here? Because the first thing that Our Lady did here is what she did in Bernadette. The first thing that she did here is what she did in Bernadette. Bernadette is a recipient of the apparitions, but she is also the first who becomes a testimony of what Our Lady of Lourdes came to do in this apparition. Therefore, it is impossible to be here and to not enter into the person of Bernadette, into her spirituality, the fundamental dimensions of her, of coming to know her heart, her person, her spiritual path, which Our Lady went teaching to her. And so we are going to see how it is necessary, if we come to serve here in Lourdes, or if we come as pilgrims, or if we come to pray, that we come to know aspects of the spirituality of Bernadette, because if we come in the spirit of Bernadette to pray, to serve, and to love Our Lady, then we must become more like Bernadette. Bernadette, first of all, is a simple girl, a humble girl who becomes a cooperator par excellence of this immense grace that happened here in Lourdes. Therefore, Bernadette is chosen, and she always knows herself to be chosen. And this is very important, brothers and sisters, because if there is a sin that fills parishes, groups, families, or the entire church, is the sin of protagonism. Do you understand what I'm speaking of? Protagonism. Nevertheless, the protagonist for Bernadette of everything that happened was not her. It was Our Lady. She was simply her servant. She knew herself to be chosen. Therefore, remember that the Lord says, "You did not choose me." Don't let it fill your head. You did not choose me. I chose you. And that phrase of the Lord is not only formative, but it also demolishes the sin of protagonism. Don't think that it was you who came to me, it was I who called you. Don't think that it was you who came to Lourdes because you decided to come to Lourdes. No, it was my mother who called you. We must place ourselves as cooperators, as chosen, and it stabilizes our ego that is so present in the flesh. Where is Bernadette? She is always kneeling below the gaze, the maternal gaze of the Blessed Virgin Mary. And it is there that she is being formed, kneeling in this grotto. So many things happen, so many that we know of and many that we do not know of, that are secrets. Where our mother is forming, and where is Bernadette being formed? In the school of the Blessed Virgin Mary, under the gaze of Our Lady, and under the direct direction of Our Lady. Our Lady begins to form Bernadette in her heart, forms her in her personality, as we saw yesterday. She forms her in her personality, but then I'll go deeper into the transformation of the personality of Bernadette. And also the form of prayer. That is why St. John Paul II and Pope Benedict XVI called the grotto the school of prayer. There, she taught her not only the importance of prayer, but she teaches her how to pray, so much so that Our Lady prays with her. But Our Lady also teaches her the importance of being a testimony to the light. That is why after the fourth apparition, Bernadette comes with a candle. And then by the fifth apparition, everybody comes with a candle. Because what Bernadette does, what the chosen one does, is what those who want to participate in the grace must do. Listen to this, because it is very important. When the Lord chooses someone, God is communicating, or Our Lady is communicating something to this person, and what this person is doing, the one that wants to participate in the same grace, to the level of each person and according to what God has for each person, but to participate in the same grace, they must do the same thing that the person that was chosen is doing. Well, Our Lady tells Bernadette, come with a candle, and Bernadette obeyed. But like people saw that Bernadette was coming with a candle, then everybody else came with a candle. This is a very healthy spirituality and a very clear spirituality. The people knew that the one that listened to Our Lady was Bernadette. That what Bernadette did was what Our Lady asked her. Therefore, if they wanted to be under the grace of the apparition, then they needed to do the same that Bernadette was doing. Our Lady also speaks to her, and Bernadette speaks of this in her writings, of the love of the Eucharist, of the Eucharistic Jesus, and that is why Our Lady asks that here there be a church built. In one of the apparitions, she tells her, go to the priest, go to the priest and tell him to build me a church. The priest tells her, well, in order to do that, tell her to tell you her name. But the theme of Lourdes for this year is go where the priest is. So there's going to be a particular mission for priests, Our Lady with priests. Why does Our Lady always ask for a chapel, a church, a sanctuary? Because she wants at the center of that place to be her Son. And she speaks to Bernadette very much about the love for Jesus in the Eucharist. If we are here in Lourdes, I want to ask you that you ask the grace of the Holy Spirit to have a more intimate relationship, a friendship with Saint Bernadette. We need to be friends of the saints. It has happened very often, perhaps not in us. We have a very great privilege as a family of understanding very well the life of the saints in the life of the Church, precisely because they are in heaven. But not only them in heaven, but we come to know their lives because their lives are schools for us, schools of holiness. But unfortunately, not all in the church have this profound understanding because of the influence of our separated brothers and sisters. There are many Catholics that have believed too much. Their separated brothers and sisters saying, oh, it's that you adore the saints. No, we do not adore the saints. We only adore God. We do not even adore Our Lady. We give Our Lady the highest veneration, but we do not adore her. We adore only God. Well, Christians say that you adore the saints. No, we know that there are older brothers and sisters that already walked their Christian life before us, and therefore, if we want to reach heaven, we walk behind them. We walk seeing what were the predominant virtues in their lives. What did they desire? What did they do? What was their spiritual path, which may not necessarily be exactly the same as yours, but the spiritual paths of the saints are like currents and fountains of grace that are inundating the entire life of the church. Well, from this grotto, Our Lady opens the fountain of grace, and that fountain of grace, the fountain of grace that is most well known in the life of the church, thanks to the hands of Saint Bernadette. Could Our Lady have done it? Yes, of course. All she had to do was flip, and the fountain would have opened.
Sino porque esto significaba un ángel, la orden a un ángel, es la reina de los ángeles.
But she could have sent the order to an angel because she is the Queen of Angels. But Our Lady always needs collaborators. And Our Lady always needs that those collaborators reach high degrees of holiness. For me, the most beautiful thing of when the study of Lourdes was done, when the church needed to do the formal approval of Lourdes, what did the most important cardinal of the commission say? He said, the proof that Lourdes is true is Bernadette herself. It's not all the miracles, even though they help, but the proof is not the miracle. The proof is the holiness of Bernadette, what Our Lady did in this girl, to the level of heroic love and heroic sacrifice. The only one that could have formed her in this is Our Lady, and that is what she proved. One of the things, brothers and sisters, that we must learn to be children of God is to learn how the saints live their interior life. All of the saints, the one that you love the most, the one that is most manifested in your lives, all of the saints have something in common. They truly loved God above all things. What we spoke about in the bus, right? All of us here, we all love God. But I don't know if all of us love Him above all things. And this begins with myself. Do I love Him more than myself? If my eye is being touched, are we upset? Yes. If my eye is being squished, do we feel indignated? Yes. So the one that these things happen when they touch you, or when they respond to you, or when they don't say hello to you, or when they don't do this or that, when they touch your eye and your eye jumps, then you love yourself more than God. Because God became man, had worse things done to Him, and He guarded silence. Another thing that we see in the saints is their desires. They truly desired the things of God. Brothers and sisters, this is very important. I believe that in these times, more than ever, this time more than ever, we need to develop our relationship with the saints. Why? Because we live in a world where it seems that holiness is impossible. We believe that the world is so bad right now that to live virtue in the midst of this world is impossible. But the saints lived this. The saints lived in difficult times, with oppositions, with persecutions, with everything that you want. And there they showed that the things of the earth were passing. That the things of the earth were passing. And here, the Lord speaks very much about this, that if the things of the earth, are passing, and the things of the earth, it's even being here, because we are here in a holy thing, a holy place, but because I am here, I could have the things of the earth in my heart. You see how there's people that fight in the grotto to sit down before Our Lady. And so they are before the grotto. How beautiful they come to the grotto of Lords. But they are dealing with the things of the world in their own hearts. Or the one that wants to be there in the grotto in the first spot. And no, put me, don't put her. Brothers and sisters, these are things of the world in us that we can bring even to the most sacred places. Have you not even seen there's people that fight even in the Mass? Even the altar servers. Thank God it's not my sons, because I would kill them. But I have seen altar servers that are upset because the other one is doing this and the other one is doing that. Do you forget that the sacrifice of Jesus is being perpetuated on the altar? Brothers and sisters, we must take conversion very seriously, because we are falling very short. Very short. And what is the danger of those we who are in the things of God and we think we're so good, but we're really not that good. We are not so good. If there are things in me that interest me, and that I want it to happen to me, and that I want to be better, and I want to be the one to explain, and I want to be this, and I want to be that, and I go before, and I don't obey, and this is what I do, and I say whatever I want. Brothers and sisters, this is a world in us. This is not holiness. Holiness is virtue. And all holiness is measured by virtue. It is the only way to measure it, because you cannot see the interior of anyone, but you can see the fruit of their interior by their virtues. Well, one of the things that people always said about Bernadette that impressed them was her modesty. Now, what is modesty?
Bueno, espérese, esas son otras virtudes. La modestia
what is modesty?
Que tiene su propia definición.
All that you're saying are other virtues. Bueno, modesty is one that has its own definition. Well, generally when we speak of modesty, it's in our dress, right? In the way we dress. She dresses modestly means that she covers her body. But that's not the modesty of which she's speaking of, because Bernadette was always very well covered. Even though it is necessary to speak of modesty as a virtue in the way that we dress, especially in our times, but modesty is above all living hidden. Just as one covers their body, that's the corporal modesty, then she also guards all of herself. She was not interested in shining. She was not interested in walking through the people. That was the greatest cross of Bernadette. To get up from the grotto, to have all the people there chasing after her. You don't know, this is the greatest cross for all visionaries, that people are there and people are asking and wanting to speak and wanting to do something. They just want to hide themselves in the mystery that they have been chosen to live. Well, Bernadette, she almost didn't speak. She didn't even want to speak of what she heard, of what Our Lady said, like Padre Pio. Padre Pio, you know what the greatest cross for Padre Pio was? It wasn't to have the stigmatas of our Lord for 50 years in his body. Imagine the pain. But the greatest cross for Padre Pio is when they would come to examine the wounds and they would remove the gloves, because he wanted to hide the mystery. If you want to hide the mystery, then you are going on the right path. If you want to tell everybody about it and you want everybody to see and you want everyone to know that you know, that's it. You don't have modesty. Modesty makes you desire to be hidden in the wounds of Christ, to be hidden in the womb of Our Lady. And if they touch you, And if you have to be giving yourself, well, then you have to give yourself permission, and it is a cross. That is the modesty of Bernadette, and it is the visible cross that all of the missionaries have, and all those who participate in one way or another in the work of God or in the work of Our Lady. One of her fellow novices in the novitiate asked her what was the most difficult thing for her when she was here in Lourdes, and she said, what was most difficult for me was that people asked me so many questions. And so she told them, well, Bernadette, but you're the only one that could say it. And she would say, I would tell them the message, I would tell them what she asked, which is the only thing that they needed to know. But then they would ask me more questions about things that didn't have to do with the essential part of the message. Here we see the sanctity of Bernadette. The protagonist wants them to ask all the questions except for the fundamental. But for Bernadette, the fundamental was the most important. She had to be the communicator of the essential to save souls. But all of these extra questions, and this, did she say this, did she do this, and why did she speak about you in this? That for Bernadette was a very profound pain. The same novice asked her again. They asked that novice when Bernadette died what it was that most attracted her to Bernadette. And she said that she had the privilege of living next to her for 8 months. I had the possibility of admiring in her a great piety. She had an emotional state of being in which she was always stable. There was not great joys or great sadnesses or great euphorias no, it was a stable emotional state, which speaks of the spiritual maturity. For the only one that we should jump is for God, brothers and sisters. I tell you with all my heart, the only one whom we should jump for is for God and for Our Lady. But those who say, oh, look, he's coming, and they start jumping, no. Today that person can fall into temptation. We must love, we must respect, but jump only for God. She says, I loved to see in her face the simplicity of a child, especially her great humility. How difficult it was for her to respond. How difficult it was for her to respond to the great letters that the most important people of government would write to her, like princes and kings and queens. She didn't say, oh, look, the Queen of England wrote to me, may she rest in peace. No, for her it was a cross that the great people of the world would write to her, and she would always say, if it was not for obedience, I would not respond. She did not like to be seeked out by the great people of the earth. What she wanted is that they seek Our Lady. And that is why there is a great wisdom of the church with visionaries. There are people that criticize the church. Why did they send Lucia to a convent? Why did they send this other one to a convent? Why did they tell the people of Medjugorje that they can't leave Medjugorje? Which I think is very smart, especially because it's not approved yet, but because they must be hidden in the place of the mystery. Or if they are not in the place of the mystery, or where they won't allow them to be hidden in the place of the mystery, then they must take them out, because if not, they cannot live interiorly the grace that they have received. The greatest grace of Bernadette or Lucia or Jacinta, after seeing Our Lady, is to live interiorly the transformation, the transfiguration of what Our Lady asked of them. But that cannot be done when there are so many people on top of you, when you don't even have a second to think, to breathe, to pray. That is why they take them out. And so, for her, that the great people of the world would seek her, what someone would have said, oh, Mother, I saw that you were next to DeSantis. DeSantis appeared there. I wasn't with DeSantis. Who cares? Who cares if the Santis or the saints are there? I'd rather that the saints be there. I want them to be by my side. Brothers and sisters, that does not matter. Sometimes we give values to things that are not important. And Bernadette was very clear in this. Her desires. Here comes the question. What is it that I most desire? And this is manifested in our daily life. What you most ask for, what you most want to be with, what you give the most time for, that is your desire. Well, the desire of Bernadette, since she was a child, she lived in misery, not in poverty. She lived in misery. Nevertheless, when they would ask her, because she's a visionary, everyone wants to buy her clothes, they want to buy her shoes, they want to buy her all these things, the great temptations of the visionaries. And she would say, no, I don't need anything. And they would tell her, but Bernadette, look at your clothes, it's even broken. And she would say, I don't need anything. I have everything. She never desired more than the essential. Never desiring more than what is necessary is a true poverty of spirit, both humanly and spiritually and emotionally. I do not need more than what I have. Because we live in a world where there is so much created necessities. Brothers and sisters, there is so much that we do not need. Oh, it's that I need to buy a new shirt. And how many shirts do you have in your closet? Well, like 30. Well, if you stayed with only 10, then there would be 20 people who do not have a shirt that now have a shirt. Do you realize how we create necessities? Oh, it's the wedding of Fulana. Oh, I need to buy a new dress. I'm not criticizing you because you can do whatever you want, but here the question is, which we must always ask ourselves, do I truly need to do this? Do I truly need this? She would say, when you don't desire anything, and this reminds me of St. Francis de Sales, when you do not desire anything, God always gives you what you need. When you don't desire anything, God will give you what you need. This is where we can understand in a very simple way what it means to seek first the kingdom of heaven and how everything else will come. Place in your heart and in your mind the things of God. Do not seek anything else, and God will give you everything that you need. Quickly, I'm going to go through because I don't want to summarize all of the life of Bernadette, but look at the desires of Bernadette. When she was here in Lourdes, she desired to hide herself, so that others would not go to where she was, but so that they could go and pray to the grotto. She wanted to disappear. She would say, if I wanted to make myself invisible. One time she even asked Our Lady, this is written in the diary of Bernadette, she asked Our Lady to make her invisible, so that when the apparition would happen, people would stay looking at the gap in the rock and they would not remain looking at her. What a beautiful desire. She did not want to be seen, but rather she wanted Our Lady to be seen. When they sent her to serve her godmother, who needed a shepherdess, the only desire that she had was to return to Lourdes so that she could go to the grotto and so that she could feel the presence of Our Lady there. But she also wanted to return, more than to return to the grotto. Look at why she wanted to return. Because she wanted to finish her catechism classes, because now Our Lady had trained her to learn the catechism so that she could receive First Communion. And so her desire was to return so that she could receive her First Communion. When they would ask her, Bernadette, how can you confront all of the difficulties that you live during your apparition? Because, brothers and sisters, people say, oh, Our Lady appeared to Bernadette. The moment that she appears, her Calvary begins. That is where all of the sufferings begin that are not comparable to the face of the Mother to see her. But this is why it always impresses me the only visionaries that we can see right now are the current visionaries, but they come and they are burdened with the world. They come shaking, they come with all these pains. They're shaking of physical pain. And I can assure you that Our Lady appears to them, because the one who could not even deal with her own self, as soon as she saw Our Lady, her face was totally transfigured. They entered into heaven. When the apparition ends, the pains return. Heaven will only be eternal if we reach there when we die. But they asked her one time, "What is your greatest desire?" When she was walking towards the grotto, she said, "Go to see our mother, so that I may listen to her, and so that then I may obey her in all things." Write that down. What must be our greatest desire? Because we pray all for the heart of Jesus through the heart of Mary. Well, our desire should be to go to listen to the Mother. But for what? To obey her. To obey her in everything, even that which is asked of you is difficult. It will place you in difficult circumstances, even if that means that you will be mocked, that you will be lonely. Brothers and sisters, look, I understand, because I'm a human person just as you are, or even worse than you are. So I understand that loneliness is difficult, right? That loneliness is difficult. But it is even worse to live desiring to not be alone. Do you understand what I'm saying? How terrible it is to live. How difficult it is to live saying, "Oh, I'm going to do this because I don't want to be alone." You go losing your personality, your character. It will even lead you to fall into things that you should not fall into, simply so I will not lose my friends, that I will not be alone. Brothers and sisters, being alone is not the worst thing. Jesus lived it. Our mother lived it. Saint Joseph lived it. They were not exempted from suffering, but did they fear being alone? Did they fear loneliness? No, and that is the difference. It is difficult to be alone. But it is even more difficult to ask yourself, what can I do to not be alone? Because there is where we reach the extremes. And even if you don't reach the extremes, you lose your interior freedom, because we are called to be freedom. We were given by the Lord a spirit of freedom, and for us to be free, I cannot be free if I am desiring something so much that without that something I am not happy. Brothers and sisters, the one that if because they are by themselves they are not happy, it's because they are not with God. The love of God is sufficient. All these people come to me with a whole tragedy because they are alone, and I tell them, be happy, because give thanks to God. As God finds you, remain. God will reveal Himself to you in your reality. But for her only desire, for Bernadette, her only desire to come to Lourdes was not to see the procession of candles, to see the people. No, it was to listen to the Mother and to obey her. Because we cannot listen without obeying. Because if we do so, we fall into a great lack of love. She would say that before the mocking and the persecution, before everything that they threatened her with, even her own family, remember that they even had to go to an even poorer place. But all of the threats, all the persecutions, all the sufferings, they called her crazy. They called her all sorts of things. But one lady asked her, "What sustained you?" And she responded, "What sustained me? The love of my mother. Love. The love that I received from Our Lady." Brothers and sisters, what can sustain us? In all of our difficulties, St. Paul says, "I can do all things in He who strengthens me." And we, apart from just knowing the Lord and receiving His strength and the strength of His love, we have the privilege. Are we not of the two hearts? We can have here in our hearts the love of the two hearts, to love one another at all moments and to go running towards them, so that in the midst of our difficulties, which are true and which are difficult, which are hard, but the only thing that can give us strength is His love. The love that she experienced, St. Paul in the first letter to the Corinthians, and we read it every wedding that we go to, every wedding we go, we listen to it. Every time you want to read anything on love, 1 Corinthians 13. Who doesn't know 1 Corinthians 13 almost by memory? But what happens is that it stayed in our memory and it did not go down to our heart. But the first thing is that he says that love can do all things. Raise your hand, those of you who believe this. Well, if we believe, then we must live according to what we believe. That love can do all things. How many times do I listen to, Mother, it's just that this case is impossible. For God, nothing is impossible. Perhaps it won't make you carry your cross, go through suffering during penance, but for love, nothing is impossible. This one is going to be a little bit more difficult. Raise your hand, those of you who believe that love can endure all things. You see how a lot of you lowered your hands? It's understandable. The love of God gives us the strength to endure what is unendurable. And here comes the most beautiful. And after this one, all of you must raise your hands. The love of God, love hopes. Brothers and sisters, we do not have the capacity to wait for God to do something or to even try to know how He will do it, but we do have the capacity by the love that He has for us to know that my Father will not abandon me in the circumstances of my very life. I can hope that my Father is going to intervene in this historic situation. How He's going to intervene, how is He going to do it, with who is He going to do it, when is He going to do it, how is He going to do it, what day is He going to do it. This I do not know, but it doesn't matter. What's important to know is that God will act. God will not leave us abandoned to the circumstances of which I live. This is a grace that we must ask for. Hope, brothers and sisters, love hopes. Never will I be able to exit my sufferings. Does it perhaps seem like you will not be able to leave? Well, trust that God will come in the perfect moment and He will take it from you. Or He will make it softer, He's going to transform it so that it is a pain that edifies and does not destroy. He is going to act, and we must ask in our Holy Mass that we may have the desires of heaven. It's not that we all want to die today. No, it is not our time. We still have to do a lot. But to desire heaven does not mean to desire death. Do you see the difference? To desire, to reach heaven, we must go through the passage of what we call dying, but we must live desiring heaven, which is something that is totally different. If you live desiring heaven, then you live in an immense plenitude, because in heaven everything is plenitude. If you live desiring heaven, you do not live in mediocrity, in a mediocre culture, that everything is just to get it over with. No, in heaven everything is perfect. In heaven everything is love. In heaven everything is happiness. In heaven everything is different from what it is here. When I live with my eyes and my heart desiring heaven, then necessarily I will convert. Because I go desiring to love as the saints love. I desire to forgive as they forgive. I desire to obey as they obey. I desire to reach the plenitude of communion with the Blessed Trinity. And this is not just after death, this is now, here. Therefore, let us ask in the Holy Mass, now that we are going to enter, that the Lord gives us the grace of the transformation of our desires. Because what you desire is what you do. Let us be honest. If you want to use the longest skirt and then they put it tied up to here, well, look, you're going to either complain the whole night, the whole week, or you're going to find a different skirt, or you're going to do something. But the truth is that the human being does what they desire. And that is why the transformation of our desires is extremely important for us to do the will of God, not our will. If our desires are similar to the desires of God, if they match up, then we are always going to do the will of God. And this is what I was not able to speak of everything, but this is what is so clearly marked in the life of Bernadette, is that she did not desire anything that Our Lady did not desire. Therefore, she did not desire anything that God did not desire. And therefore, all of her desires were desires, celestial desires. Before dying, Bernadette was very, 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 very sick. And one of her superiors asked her, "Now that heaven is closer to you, what is it that you most desire?" And she said, "To get there, but to get there pure, like my mother that I saw at the grotto." Imagine saying this. How much more should we say it? And then the mother told her, "Is there any other desire?" And she told her, Pray that I may have time to say 3 words before I die. Jesus, Mary, and Joseph." How beautiful, right? Look at the desires, brothers and sisters. If our desires are simple, if our desires are holy, if our desires are celestial, then our life will be so much more simple. Because our desires are not rooted or attached to the world that we live in, but our desires go beyond the world. Our feet walk more freely because they are not attached to the world. Our heart is attached to the things of heaven. And so let us ask in the Holy Mass that, like Bernadette, our desires can be transformed, so that the only thing that interests us is to listen to the Mother so that we may obey her, and to desire the things of heaven. Not because we want to renounce to live on this earth, because we cannot renounce to live on this earth. We are here to transform it. We are here to give the best of ourselves and make a better world. But to make a better world, you must have a good heart. Amen.